Good morning, students. Today we are going to read class 7th SST History, chapter number 4, The Mughals, part 2. So, in the previous videos, I had explained about the Babur, Humayun, and Sher Shah Suri. So, in that video, I had explained about how the Babur entered in India and the first battle of Panipat, that is fought between the Babur and Ibrahim Lodi in 1526. This battle led to the entrance of Mughals or Mongols in India and establishment of Mughal Empire. Soon after the death of Babur, Humayun ascended the throne, but Humayun is also ruled for a short term and he exiled for 15 years, and after he came back in 1555 and he started ruling, but after a few months he died in 1556 while he was reading in his library and he fell from there. So after the death of Humayun, his son Akbar, at very young age, he ascended the throne. So in this video we'll read about Akbar and the other Mughal emperors. So Abul Fatah Jalal Uddin Muhammad Akbar, this was the name given to the Akbar. He was born on 14 October in 1542, also known as Akbar the Great or the Akbar. So his name was Akbar or Akbar the Great. Why he was considered as great, you will definitely understand after finishing his topic, and whatever he did in his whole life, you are able to understand. So he was the Mughal emperor from 1556 until his death. He was the third and one of the greatest ruler of the Mughal dynasty in India. So he was considered as the one of the greatest ruler of the Mughal dynasty. In 1556, when Humayun died, after after some time when he retake his Delhi back, so Akbar ascended the throne. At the age of 13, he was very young and he became the Shahanshah, the king of kings after some time. At very young age, he was not that much capable to hold his whole empire. So to protect him, uh, his regent was there, Baram Khan. He was his childhood guardian and was an outstanding warrior and statesman. So Baram Khan was already at the time of Humayun and he was there to help the Akbar to make his reign strengthen. Akbar the Great, he was the greatest ruler, as I said, and he was born in 1542 at Amarkot in Rajasthan. Now, at that time, his father Humayun had lost his empire and was staying with Rana of Amarkot. So during that time, Humayun was staying with the Rana or the king of the Amarkot during the birth of Akbar. So after some time, when Humayun fled to Iran, when his young Akbar was captured by his uncle, and later he was reunited by his parent only after the capture of Kandahar. So when Humayun left Amarkot and he went to the Persia, there after some time when Akbar was there at the Amarkot, he was captured by his uncle Kamran, and Kamran was there. Kamran knows that I in the last video explained that Humayun went to the ruler of Persia, Shah Tahmasp, and Kamran offered Shah Tahmasp if he handed over the Humayun, he will give the Kandahar to the Shah Tamas, but Shah Tamas refused to do so, and he helped the Humayun to uh, he helped Humayun, and Kamran has to leave that Humayun. Akbar ascended the throne in 1556, and he was at that time 13 year and 4 month old. So there the Akbar was so small to take over the responsibility, as I told. So the Humayun, he is having the loyal officer, the Baram Khan was as his regent. So at the time of his accession, Akbar was threatened by enemies from all sides because he was so young. So the other rulers were thinking that if the Akbar is small, he cannot hold the empire, or this they took the benefit, and they started threatening the Akbar and wanted to capture the Agra. Beyond Agra, the Afghans were still strong and wanted to capture the throne of Delhi. So there, the Afghan rulers, those who were ruling before the Mughal Empire, and the Sher Shah Suri, the Afghan, so they wanted to capture the Delhi again. Adil Shah was there. He was the nephew of Sher Shah, and his area was from Chunar to Bengal, a long area that is covered by the Adil Shah, that was the nephew of Sher Shah. Adil Shah wanted to capture the Delhi back again from the Humayun. Though the Humayun was died, and after the death of Humayun, Akbar was there, and he was very young. The greatest threat was from Hemu. So Hemu was the minister of Adil Shah, and Adil Shah was the Afghan ruler, and he is having the area from Chunar to Bengal borders. So Hemu, he was the minister of Adil Shah, and he was strengthening his power day by day. And on the other hand, the Rajputs, those who are living near the peripheral areas, they were also strengthening their position, and they also wanted to oust the Mughals from the India. They wanted to throw them out from the India. However, Akbar rose to occasion and solved his problem. So this was the time when Akbar uh, started taking his powers and started taking decision, and he started solving his problem against the Afghan and the Rajput rulers, those who proved as a threaten to the Akbar. So in the battle of overcoming from those threaten, Akbar started the battle of Panipat second. So the battle of Panipat was fought on the very same year in which the Akbar got ascended his throne, in the year 1556. Here the Mughal forces clashed with the Afghan forces, and led by the chief minister and general of Adil Shah, Hemu. So as I told, Hemu was strengthening his power day by day, and he wanted to capture the territory of the Mughal Empire. So they fought with each other, and this battle was there, and Hemu was get defeated by Mughals, and then Delhi, which was uh, occupied by the Akbar, and after defeating the Akbar, Hemu occupied the city. But before he can consolidate his position, Akbar forces under the Baram Khan march onto Delhi. So when Hemu won the battle that is fought between Akbar's and the Afghan forces. That battle was won by Hemu, and Hemu is ready to go to the take over the Delhi. But during that time, means before that only, before capturing Delhi, Baram Khan has Baram Khan went to the Delhi with his army, and he's there. They fought with each other, and Afghan army was defeated by the Baram Khan. Hemi was captured, and after capturing, he was killed. This was the second battle of Panipat. in which Afghan powers were crushed and removed by the Akbar and the Mughal Empire. And then the Baram Khan reoccupied the Agra and Delhi, and the Akbar has came into power and started ruling the Mughal or the Delhi area. So in 1560, when Akbar grown up, and he asked Baram Khan to return his whole power and ask him to go to the Islam pilgrim, that is Makkah. And the when Baram Khan is way to his Makkah, he was killed by an Afghan. So Akbar, uh, while reading the Akbars, we have to understand that how the Akbar covered the area uh, during his reign, what the policy he adopted to conquest the areas, those who are the peripheral rulers or the kingdoms in his uh, just near to the Delhi. So for that he adopted the two policy. The first one is direct conquest, and the another one is matrimonial alliance. Direct conquest means to fought to fought with them, or the another one is matrimonial alliances. The marriages means where the marriages are to be done by the Rajput princes, and that led to the relationship between the Mughal and that particular Rajput. So let us see one by one how the Akbar conquest and how the Akbar is there to win the territories. Let's see. Akbar conquered Malwa, Gondwana, Gujarat, Bengal, Bihar, Kabul, Kashmir, Sindh, Kandahar. So this was the area or the kingdoms that was captured by the Akbar during his reign. After consolidating his power in the northern India, Akbar turned his attention toward the Deccan. So when he captured the northern India and the all power is into his hand, he turned his attention toward the Deccan. So he first tried to bring the Deccan Sultan under his control by the diplomacy. So basically he sent his ambassador to there, like Khandesh, Bijapur, Golconda, Ahmednagar. So these are the state of Deccan, and present day it is in the Karnataka and the Andhra Pradesh region. So Akbar sent his diplomats and the ambassador to these kingdom, asked them to accept the overlordship. So overlordship and to pay tribute basically. But these Deccan states were refused to accept the overlordship. So Akbar waged war against them and annexed the Berar, Khandesh and Ahmednagar. So when the ruler of the Berar, Khandesh and Ahmednagar did not accept the suzerainty of the Akbar or overlordship of Akbar, so Akbar waged wars again. He started war against them and conquered the area of Berar, Khandesh and Ahmednagar. So this was the very large area that is covered by the Akbar. So in your book page number 172, there is a map that there you can see how the what is the territories of the Akbar that was captured by the Akbar basically. So he had also adopted one policy, that is the Rajput policy, for taking the for covering or annexing the territories of the India. So he adopted the Rajput policy. So let's see what is the Rajput policy. So Akbar realized that he could not consolidate his empire without the support of the Rajput. So being in the Hindu state or Hindu country, Akbar realized that without Rajput he was not able to hold his empire very long. So he adopted a friendly policy towards them, and for that he appointed the Rajputs at very high position in the administration. So he gave a high position, high post in his administration. For example, Raja Bihari Mal and his son Bhagwan Das, Raja Mohan Singh, Raja Man Singh, Raja Todormal, Birbal. So these, there are some more are there. They were given as the high post for the administration purpose. And he also took matrimonial alliances with the Rajput uh, families or the Rajput princesses. That he married in 1562. He married to the daughter of Raja Bharmal of Amer, Harkha Bhai, and she was also known as Jodha Bhai. And after getting married to Akbar, she was renamed by Maryam Uz Zamani. And Akbar also married two Rajput other princes in of Bikaner in 1572, and he also married his princess to some of the Hindu Rajputs princesses, that to make the matrimonial alliances, make the relationship between the Rajputs, and ask them to accept the overlordship or the suzerainty. One of the other that is the direct conquest. Direct conquest is what, when uh, uh, when any of the kingdom is not accepting the suzerainty or the overlordship of Akbar, he is he direct conquest, he waged direct war against that particular kingdom. So for that, let's see. Akbar followed an aggressive policy toward those rulers who refused to accept his suzerainty. So those who did not accept his overlordship, he directly attacked on them. So one such state that refused to accept Mughal suzerainty was the Mewar. So Mewar was there, and there that time Rana Uday Singh was the ruler, and he did not accept the overlordship of Akbar. So the Rajputs started fighting with Akbar, and Rajputs wanted to recover the Chittor. Chittor was under the Mughal during that time, after defeating the Rana Uday Singh. So he after defeating Rana Uday Singh, his son Rana Pratap, Maharana Pratap was there, and he continued his battle against the Mughals by not accepting the overlordship of Akbar. So Maharana Pratap of Mewar, he carried out the struggle against the Mughal. He is the only ruler and of the Mewar. He did not accepted the overlordship of the Akbar. So between Akbar and Maharana Pratap there was a battle, that is the Battle of Haldi Ghati. It was fought in the year of 1576, where Maharana Pratap was defeated and Mughals were won that battle. And after 1576, Maharana Pratap escaped to the mountain fortress. So after that, Maharana Pratap escaped from there, and after some time he took the last breath. Akbar carved out huge empire stretching from Himalaya in the north to the Godavari in the south, from the Himalaya mountain to the Godavari river to the south, from Hindu Kush, that is in the present day Afghanistan, from that area to the west of Brahmaputra river in the east. So this was the very long area, huge area that is covered by the Akbar, and that area was known as the Mughal Empire. Administration. So for the administration, Akbar the Akbarin was the establishment of efficient administrative system, because Akbar has adopted a very good administrative system. He made the official language Persian, and he uniformed the administrative system and coinage and common system of weight and measures. So he strengthened the administrative system. He also introduced the coinage system and common system for weights and measure, as per the Sher Shah Suri had done in his rule. So Akbar administrative system can be grouped under two heads, that is the central administration and the provincial administration. So in the further video will read more about the central administration, and the provincial administration I will explain in those videos. So the central administration is headed by the emperor, and the provincial administration is headed by the other nobles, those who are there for the appointed by the Akbar. Akbar held regular meeting with his senior officer in Diwan-e-Khas. So Akbar had maintained Diwan-e-Khas and Diwan-e-Am. This is the two halls that was meant for the discussion. The Diwan-e-Khas is meant for the discussion of with the senior officer for the important matters, and Diwan-e-Am is for the every person, the subjects of the Mughal Empire. They can also ask, they can join to the Diwan-e-Am, and there they can there they can ask Akbar to solve their problem, and Akbar solved many problems on the spot during that time. So as per this, Akbar himself considered as a guardian of his subjects. So that's why he is there. He started the Diwan-e-Am to solve the problems of his subjects directly by him. Akbar know that if there is a uniform coinage system in his empire, so definitely the trade will increase. So he introduced a new uniform standard of coinage, but ordered that the older coin which were still current should be accepted from the peasants for till the face value. So he was so generous that he asked what the changes he brought in the coins. He asked the peasants to give their taxes or revenue in the form of old coins which they have already. So this shows the Akbar wanted to have a strict justice along with the safeguarding the interest of the peasants. So this shows that the peasants, those who are very poor, they can also have the opportunity to live their life as they want. So for that you can observe that the coin with what he had started the new coins, and he asked the peasant to pay the revenue in the old coins. This led to the generosity of the Akbar. He introduced several silver, copper, gold coins with an open minting system in which anyone willing to pay the minting charges and could bring metal and get the coin minted. So he adopted open minting system. So open minting system is what anyone is having the metal, and they can bear up the minting charge. They can mint the coin by their own in the name of the Akbar. There are some picture of the coin that were used during the Mughal rule. He also made the uniform weights and measures. So before the Akbar reign, weights and measure system varied from region to region and commodity to commodity. Means from object to object, and region means the areas to area. The system of measure and weights were differ. So for that he fixed the weight and measurement. That is the for that he introduced the Ilahi gauge, and this gauge has a 3 varieties like long gauge, middle gauge and short gauge. So this was the basically a scale on which the things are measured. Like the long gauge was used to measure the forts and the roads. Middle gauge was used to measure the stone house and the temples and the gardens, and the short gauge is used to measure the garments, table linen, etc. So this is the measurement that it was brought by the Akbar, and it was of the 3 kind. Mansabdari system. So Mansabdari system is what it is a term that means the holding of a particular rank in the administration. Suppose if you are a Mansab, it means that you are the part of the central administration of the administration of the Mughal Empire. So The Mughal administration was essentially a military one. Under this system, every official was given a rank according to the nature of their job. So, according to the job, the ranks were given to the officials, those who are working in the Mughal Empire. Those who joined the Mughal services were enrolled as Mansabdar and were given a rank known as Mansab. So, whosoever has joined the Mughal Empire, Mughal army or administration, they were considered as a Mansabdar. The each rank were further divided into Jat and Sawar. So ranks were decided on the basis of Jat and Sawar. So anybody is entering in the Mughal administration, so that person is considered as a Mansab, and Mansab is decided by the Jat and Sawar. So how many Jat is uh, is under the Mansab is considered his post. Suppose the lowest one is about 10 and the highest one is about 10,000. So the lowest one is the Jat, that indicates the number of cavalrymen under him, that is the Sawar. So basically, if a person is having 10 Jat, he is the lowest Jat or the lowest Mansab, and when it is increased 10, 20, 100, 200, 400, 1000 in 10,000 ranks. So that Jat is the highest post and rank, and it also shows the status of particular people and the salary. So this was Jat, and under him how many Sawars are there? Sawars are means they are the horse riders, those who are the cavalrymen, basically those who are fighting on the horse. So this is the way of system of Mansabdari, and where the Jat is head, a Jat is decided the rank and the salary of the Mansabdars. This Mansabdars were appointed and promoted and dismissed by the emperor. So it is on the decision of emperor the which person is qualified for the appointing and promoting and dismissing from the Mansabdars. So Mansabdar, the person who is got the Mansabdar become the Mansab, he did not, the rank did not become hereditary. So a person is get the Mansab, he is the only is holding that rank. After the death of Jagir, reverted to the king, and who granted it to someone else. So in some places, if the Jagirs that was given to the Mansabdars, if that Mansabdar is died, so in that place that Mansabdari was given to the another Mansabdar, or that Jagir was given to the another Mansabdar. So for that Mansabdari, I will upload the another video, there you can see the whole description about the Mansabdari system. Some military reforms. So for that he maintained the system of branding horse and descriptive role of soldiers, that is introduced by the Alauddin Khilji, Dag and Chehra. This policy was also adopted by the Akbar. He maintained the standing army and the cavalry as well, the horsemen. So the troops were mainly supplied from the Mansabdar. So whatever the soldiers are coming to serve the Mughal Empire, those troops were, or those soldiers were given by the Mansabdar. The emperor also maintained a battalion of royal and trusted soldiers. So emperor is meant to maintain the battalion of royal and trusted soldiers, means the soldiers, those who are trustworthy to the Mughal Empire, they were appointed as a special battalions for the emperor. He maintained the corps of royal bodyguard and large number of war elephant and well organized artillery. So he was known for the making the royal bodyguards as well as war elephant. War elephant means the war where the elephants were used for the fight purposes, that were known as the war elephant. They were also trained to how to provide help to the soldiers while fighting to the enemies. Revenue system. So revenue system, Akbar adopted the basic structure of Sher Shah revenue system, which was continued till 1585. So he adopted the revenue system, and with the help of revenue system of Sher Shah, what he was introduced during his reign. With the help of revenue minister Todermal, he introduced some of important land reform system, and it was known as Todermal Bandobast or the settlement. So there is a revenue minister of Akbar, and his name was Todermal, and Todermal has introduced one important land reform system, and that land reform system was known as Todermal Bandobast. So it was also known as Japti or Dahshala system. So this Todermal Bandobast also known as Japti or Dahshala Bandobast system. In that, lands were surveyed and measured. The land were classified into four categories on the basis of regularity cultivated and occasionally cultivated. Like Polaz was the land which was cultivated every year, and it was never left fallow. It does not means it should be cultivated every year. Where Paroti was there, it was the land which had to be left fallow for time, and because of that it it recovers its fertility. So this was the two kind of land that on the basis of their cultivation and occasionally cultivation based. The land was measured with the bamboo jarib joined together with iron rings instead of hemp rope used before. So earlier the ropes was used to measure the land, but after this Todermal in Bandobast, bamboo was used to measure the land. The average produce and the average price over the 10 years was calculated. So how much the production of there in the Mughal Empire, and average price of the production, it was always changed between the 10 years. The 1/3 of produce was king's share. It could be paid in cash or kind. So whatever you will produce, the peasants were producing at that time, they have to pay 1/3 of their produce. Basically, they can either paid in cash, the amount, the value of the particular product, or they can give the product directly to the Mughal Empire. Revenue officers were instructed to treat the peasants well. So here the Akbar is very keeping the watch on the revenue officer that they cannot harass the peasants. If the crops were failed due to drought and flood, the state of remission of revenue. So if a drought or flood occurs, so that time the production is not there, so that time taxes were also abolished for that particular time. Loans are also provided to the peasants that they can buy seed, cattle and implement, and if they purchase those things, they can grow, they can produce a lot of things, and that production led to the increase the revenue of the kingdom. So it was directly related to the revenue system, and that is why they are providing the loan to the peasants on a very easy installments. Trade during the rule of Akbar, the trade was so good, and it was the most, it was also the source of revenue, because but it was, if you compare to the land, it was less than the land, but it was also the source of revenue. The main component that was exported from here, that is spices, indigo, textile, saltpeter is it is used to preserve the meat during that time. India traded with China, Central Asia and Europe, and the Portuguese, they have established their trade center on the western coast during the Akbar reign. So during the rule of Akbar, the Portuguese, they had established their trade center with the permission of the Akbar. Religious policy, Akbar followed a policy of religious tolerance and believed the administrating equal justice to the follower of religion, of all religion. Basically, he followed the policy of religious tolerance, and he believed in the equal justice to the all follower of the all religion. So he wanted to unite and diverse the races of India into one nation. So for that he took number of measures to lay the foundation of empire on the basis of equal right to the all citizen irrespective of their religious belief. So Akbar was remembered for making the all religions equal and providing and believing on their religious belief. So for that he abolished the jizya. Jizya is the tax that was meant to pay by the non-Muslim subjects of the empire, and also the pilgrims tax or bathing at the holy places such as Prayag and Banaras. So this was also abolished by the Akbar. If a person is willing to go to the pilgrims like Mathura, Banaras, Ayodhya, like that, they had to also pay the taxes. So these taxes were removed by the Akbar. He treated all his subjects equally, gave high post to according to the merit without any restriction of the caste, creed, or religion. So as I told that he appoint his subjects, whether they are non-Muslims also, on the various posts. This shows that he do not discriminate against the people of caste, creed, or religion. Or he also married the Rajput princess and allow them to freedom to practice their own faith. So whatever the Rajput princess, he wed with them, and he allowed to celebrate them Diwali, Holi, and he also took the part in those festivals. So this shows the religious acceptance of the Akbar during his rule. He gave the land grants to the person of the merit irrespective of their religious belief. So person of merit means the person who is very good scholar, or the person who is very influential to the Akbar, he provide the land grants to them. Akbar also wanted to create a spirit of love and brotherhood among the all people of all religion. As I said, he wanted to make all religion equal and provide the equal rights in the rule of his own. In 1575, he built a hall called the Ibadat Khana or Hall of Prayer. So there this Ibadat Khana was meant in the city Fatehpur Sikri, and this was the center where he called the all religious and spiritual leaders and discuss with them on the Thursday in this hall. So at the first he only called the Islam teachers, and later on he called the Christian, Zoroastrians, Hindus, Jain, and even atheists also. So he called everybody. Atheist means those who do not follow any religion, they do not have believe in any faith. So he started calling all of them, and he decided to take his own hand on all religious matters and issued a declaration or mahazar. So he declared he gave the orders that he will take the interest in all religious matter, and this made the Akbar the supreme religious head of the Muslims. Deen-e-Ilahi. He had started one religion that was the result of the Ibadat Khana, because in the Ibadat Khana all the religious leaders were there. They used to give their own opinion on the religion, and he concluded all the good point from the all religion, and he made his own faith, that is the Deen-e-Ilahi. So the comparative study of the different religion at the Ibadat Khana led the Akbar to form the Deen-e-Ilahi, that is the divine faith. The new faith included the good point of the religion, and it is believed in one supreme God. The basic purpose of the formation of Deen-e-Ilahi was Sulh-e-Kul, or the universal harmony. So why he started the divine faith or the Deen-e-Ilahi? Because he wanted a universal harmony in the Mughal Empire or the India. So for that he started the Sulh-e-Kul. Sulh-e-Kul is what? It is the idea of tolerance, that he will not discriminate between the people of the different religion. So this is the Deen-e-Ilahi, and Deen-e-Ilahi is on the base of Sulh-e-Kul, means the universal harmony and the universal peace. So this Deen-e-Ilahi or Sulh-e-Kul focused on the system of justice, peace, honesty, that is universally applicable, means it is applicable for the all religions and the all faith, that everyone is to be get the peace or honesty and get the justice. So this is the common thing that he mentioned in the Deen Ilahi. There was no sacred book, no priest, no temples, rituals in the new faith. So what he had brought, the Deen Ilahi, it was without book, sacred book, without priest, and the member of this faith were followed to code of conduct, that is not to eat meat at least in the month of their birth. In which month they have get birth, they do not eat. They do not have to eat meat in that month. Give alms to their birthday, to donation to the poor people on the birthday, and to be good, to do good everybody. So these are the policies or the code of conduct that he had started in the Deen Ilahi. Akbar did not use force nor money to make people accept the faith. Means that he did not ask people to accept this, but very few people were there, those who joined, like Akbar and Birbal was there, who joined the Deen Ilahi, and after the death of Akbar, Deen Ilahi was stopped. Some educational and social reform that is done by the Akbar. He abolished the sati and legalized the widow remarriage. Sati system and widow remarriage. Sati system was burning the wife on the death of his husband. Widow remarriage, if a uh, if a husband is died, so that wife can get married again to the another person. He raised the age of marriage from, for girls it is 14 and boys it was 16. He restricted the sale of wine and spirit. He directly restricted the sale of wine in his kingdom. And he also revised the educational syllabus, where he uh, laid the more stress on moral education and on secular subjects. Secular subject means that where they were taught for the all religions. He set up the translation department, that is there they translate the work of Sanskrit and Arabic and Greek. So this translation department is there to convert the books into the different languages from the different languages. Cultural achievement. The Akbar was patron of art and literature. Though he did not receive any formal education during the childhood, why he was versatile genius. So because of the exile of Humayun, Akbar did not get the chance to educate himself. So he was illiterate, but he was very genius, and he encouraged the study of astronomy, mathematics, logic, and history. And he also had the library which had the 4,000 manuscript, and he could understand easily the fine points of poetry, the deep points of poetry, art, religion, and philosophy. Navratna. Akbar had Navratna, 9 gems in his empire, that is Abul Fazl. He wrote the Akbar Nama and Ain Akbari. Faizi, he translated the Mahabharata and Ramayana into Persian language. Abdul Rahim Khane Khana, or Rahim Khan, we call him. He was famous for his Doha. Todermal, his revenue minister. Man Singh, his military general. Birbal, his constant companion, as well as famous and intelligent and sharp wit. You might have heard about the Birbal from the different various stories. Tansen is also great singer and musician. He composed the Rag Darbari in the praise of Akbar. Fakir Aziuddin, he was a mystic having the spiritual powers with them. So he was also the one of the chief advisor. Mullah Do Piazza, he was also a scholar, and he is also very wittious, means very intelligent. During the reign of Akbar, painting was organized in the royal Karkhana. So whatever the paintings were organized, that is in the royal Karkhana, where the painters from the different part of the country had to make beautiful paintings. These artists blended the Persian and Indian style. So the Persian and Indian style of painting were get merged together, and the formation of new painting style, that is the Mughal painting. The scene depicted in these painting included the hunting and courting. So it was mainly basis on the hunting and the court scene, means the ruler and his nobles. So the peacock blue color and the red color, this is the two main color that was used during that painting that time. Paintings were also using illustrating the Persian books. So illustrating means It tells the story of that particular painting, what the painting is saying. It was the most important work is Dastane Amir Hamza ya Hamza Nama. This was the most important work, and this book contains the 1200 paintings. You can imagine at that time 1200 paintings were so uh, big issue to big paintings that were made during that time. Jaswant and Daswant, these are the two famous painters of the Akbar court. So here we can conclude that during the whole study what we have read from the first beginning of the Akbar, that Akbar was regarded as the greatest ruler of India. He built vast empire and gave the empire political and administrative unity. He restored the war and only when other means failed. So he only wages war only when the all means what he tried to make them the part of the Mughal empire if he fails in that. He did the great service to the nation by bringing about the religious unity. He made the all religions equal. He promoted art, architecture, literature, music, painting, and gave them unique Indian color. So this was done by the Akbar largely, and it was a great thing that is done by the Akbar.